You're listening to Fresh from the Scene with your host, Ruby Price.
Welcome to Fresh from the Scene. This still exists. Today we're going to be here to review the top 5 albums / EPs of the year. And I couldn't do it without bringing back from 2021, Chazz Cheron.
Your boy, I'm here. I'm
He's
here.
here.
I'm here for the first time in 2 years. Someone forgot to do it last year.
I didn't forget. I'm busy and had a breakdown and all of that stuff. All that cheery stuff.
A likely excuse.
Chazz, what have you been doing since this last podcast?
This last 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've had 3 full entire jobs. I've also started my own podcast, which I'm sure Ruby will link down in the description because she's good like that. What else have I been doing? I've got 2 cats now, a lizard and a frog, and lots has been going on. What do you want from me?
I mean, in all honesty, like, just the plug for Feedback was enough.
Oh, yeah, I started my own podcast, Feedbacker Weekly. Go and check it out. I review all the new music coming out every single week. Every single week is not exactly the truth, but most weeks. But there you go.
So reviewing new music obviously means that, someone's going to at least have a much fresher list of albums and stuff from the year than me, who listens to the same 5 bands every year.
And yet the title of your podcast is Fresh from the Scene.
I know. The irony.
How many podcasts have you released this year?
This is episode 2 of 2023.
Nice.
I had big plans. I'd just spoken to the former bassist of As It Is, and I was going to take things astronomical, and then 2023 happened.
But Grid Talk's going strong.
Grid Talk's going strong, my other podcast that has absolutely nothing to do with music. I've betrayed the squad and become a sports journalist.
Hey. If F1 cars are music to your ears, that counts as much as anything else.
Sports Podcast of the Year nomination.
Whoa. But not a win.
Well, I don't know. The nominations come out next week, so.
Oh, okay, that's all right then. That's all right. I was trying to rub salt in a wound that hasn't even been opened yet. Okay.
Exactly.
So what are we, 10 minutes in and we're already completely off topic? Continue.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't even start on topic, but the way this is going to work, obviously, if you've listened to the 2 of these that we've done in the past, in the 3 years that I've been doing it.
You're rubbing salt in your own wound there.
Exactly. As opposed to the previous years where we've done songs as well, this time we're just going to focus on albums and EPs because I wanted to include EPs. EPs are a release. We're obviously moving more away to a shorter, release when it comes to it for artists. I'm phrasing this really well, but we are moving to short form content ultimately. And, EPs are sort of the industry trend that's seemingly replacing albums, and even albums that we're getting are about as long as an EP used to be back in the day.
Well, to be fair, what I will say is, yes, that's entirely true, but it also depends what you're hoping to get out of it. A lot of small artists right now are finding a lot more success putting out singles and putting out EPs, and because it's obviously virality that's really going to get your music out there, and so you don't really need to put out a set 12 songs. That being said, a lot of major artists, especially rap artists, are still putting out these goddamn awful 30-song albums in order to just stream fish people. But completely off topic, I just wanted to give my 2 pence on the situation. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even off topic. It is true, and it is the sort of counterculture genres at the very least that are doing this and are still producing sort of full length records. Have you got any honorable mentions for your albums and EPs before we actually get on with the top 5s? Because I've got 3.
So if I was to give out all my honorable mentions, I could be here for 100 or so years, because I've got a whole list in my phone somewhere of albums that I've really, really enjoyed this year. Cutting them down to 5 was quite tough, but I'm just going to name a few that I've really, really enjoyed this year. So the new Geese record, 3D Country, that's really, really, really good. If you enjoy post-punk from New York, really, really great. The new Hozier record, Unreal Unearth, is really fun from start to finish. It's got like 3 or 4 songs on there, which are some of the best songs of the year. And I'm kind of sad that that hasn't made it this far, but there you go. The new Hot Mulligan record is amazing. It's called Why Would I Watch? That's really, really good. Fizz, which is Orla Gartland, Dodie, and oh my God, who's the last one? It's going to come back to me very, very soon, and it's going to make me very annoyed. Fizz have got a great new album, Secret to Life. That record is the sound of friendship from start to finish. It's got some of the best songs of the year on it as well. Those are my recommendations. I've got loads and loads more, but those are the ones I'd particularly like to shout out.
I mean, before I actually say that, I will just also jump on the Orla Gartland bandwagon and say that Kiss Your Face Forever was like one of my like top songs of the year.
It's a good one.
I stuck it on repeat for like half a day, and it still didn't appear in my Apple Music replay at like near the top at least.
Fair enough.
But that's just because I've been listening to one band pretty much all year. But my top 3 of honorable mentions, I'm gonna say Zand, who released their Superstar EP this year, their debut EP, Ugly Pop as they have dubbed it, and I think produced in part, at the very least, by Bobby Wolfgang, formerly of Strange Bones. If you want some really sort of grindy synths and, you know, this NB Goblin screaming at you, Superstar is the thing for you. Continuing in the complete polar opposite of what I've just said, the Hoosiers and their album Confidence. The Hoosiers, of course, everyone remembers from one song in 2008.
Whoa. There's Goodbye, Mr. A, and Worried About Ray. You can't forget about those.
I know, I didn't.
Okay,
I'm the one that continued listening to the Hoosiers, like between.
Yeah, but you said one song. They had 2 top 10 hits, bro. Less of that.
You also forgot about the Trick to Life. But yeah, Confidence, it's sort of classic Hoosiers meets like a sort of more modern indie style. Some of the like brassy synth like licks that album's got, like complete earworms. I had them stuck in my head for weeks. And if it had come out a bit earlier, it might have actually been higher up on this list. And then the last of my honorable mentions, I'm going to give it to Arthur Walwyn, who released the Prius Diaries, harking back to 2005 MySpace era. You know, it's very pop punky. It's got a few throwback references to like wrestling, so Screwjob 97. So yeah, those are some honorable mentions out of the way. Should we get started with our top 5? I'm gonna let you take the first one.
Number 5. So my number 5 favorite record of the year is an album by Sampha. It's called La High. So Sampha is an artist I've been familiar with for a long time. In fact, the first time I ever heard of him was when I played one of his songs from his first record on my radio show at university. So that's come all the way full circle. If anyone is familiar with the Rube's Law, then might be aware of the radio show that she did host while she was at university. Around that same time, I was becoming a huge fan of Sampha. At the time, he was making a sort of bedroom-y sort of R&B sound. It had a sort of UK garage influence to it, and he very quickly, off the back of like 1 or 2 releases, was one of the most sought-after vocalists in the industry. Not too long after his first album came out, he was featured on an album on More Life with Drake, and he's also featured on loads and loads of other projects. He's widely renowned as one of the best R&B vocalists in the UK scene, but he took his absolute sweet time in releasing his second record, so much so that 7 years has gone by since that first record came out, and he finally saw fit to drop an album of gems on us this year. And honestly, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I wasn't a huge fan of the first single that dropped from it, but there's one of the singles was called Suspended, and I remember I was getting off a bus the first time it played in my headphones randomly. And honestly, I had to sit down, and I was late to work because I just had to take the song in. Like, it has such a gorgeous audio soundscape that I physically could not put it down. And so I turned up to work late in order to listen to it in full. It's not a particularly long song, but there you go. Now, the rest of the record is equally as vibrant. A lot of really fantastic passages of synth work, and a lot of really uplifting messaging in it as well. Sampha, as always, really, really gorgeous vocalist. If anything, he really plays his vocals, which are his biggest strength, really well in that record, and they soar when they need to. His falsetto is beautiful. The songwriting is incredible. If he needs to wait another 7 years to release the next album, so be it. If it ends up as good as this one, and it's an album I would definitely recommend if that sounds good to you. R&B, garage, sort of electronic based R&B. If that sounds good to you, go and check out the song Suspended, Spirit 2.0 as well. The song Only. If you like what you hear there, definitely check out that project. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I don't really have much more that I can even add. The genre itself isn't something that resonates a lot with me. But whilst I was listening through in preparation for this episode, as I've obviously mentioned to you off air, like, I can fully appreciate that, this is a good record, and it's got, I don't know the things that make up a good, record in this genre, but I think it works really well.
Continue. Your number 5, Ruby.
My number 5 is Enter Shikari with their record, A Kiss for the Whole World. Now, I am fully aware that this Enter Shikari release has been particularly divisive, as have every release that they've done since Take to the Skies, because nobody hates Enter Shikari more than people who claim to be Enter Shikari fans. Yeah, this record, I think it could have been higher for me. I think if it had maybe more tracks to it, like, there are obviously quite a few, what do you call them, coders and like reprises and things like that. But what it really is like short and aggressive, and it doesn't really dwell on things except when it's bringing them back for those, aforementioned coders. But it doesn't dwell on something that, like, I think with previous records, Shikari might have like done 3 or 4 more occurrences of in the same song. And a lot of it as well seems like it's something that has been like crafted with a live way to it. What am I on? Like, how do I host a podcast when I can't talk really about music? I can talk to people, but anyway, my point being, when I saw Shikari live earlier this year at their residency shows, you could see the sort of attention to detail with like songs like Please Set Me on Fire, where like even on like their light staging that they had behind them, like it was like the most warming sun that I've ever really had. And like actually being present for that whilst it was going on, like, actually just kind of uplifted me physically. What else is on this album?
I can tell you my favorite songs from that record if you want. Goldfish, Giant Pacific Octopus, they're both great.
I meant to actually get my track listing up from this, so I wouldn't be doing this whilst the show was going on. The 2 that you've just mentioned, obviously Goldfish and Giant Pacific Octopus, I think are 2 pretty brilliant Enter Shikari songs. Like the animal metaphors that's going on there, but also like just kind of like the wordplay that's going on. I am the goldfish, you are the bowl. I think that's pretty, it's probably not Rao's greatest lyric of all time, but it is one that's gonna like stick with me for quite a while. But then also Jailbreak, Bloodshot is particularly sort of like Insomnia by Faithless, very similar to that. And I can't unlink the meme of It Hurts with an F1 car going past, like with the like the Nyum like synth that goes on in the back of that song. Like every time it comes on, like I just kind of want to get like a V8 noise and just have it play through.
You just sleep and dream F1 cars, I think, at this point. With that Shikari record, definitely I've got a lot of love for a lot of the tracks on that record. I think "Set Me on Fire," "Please Set Me on Fire" is
Yeah.
is actually one of their best songs for a really long time. "Bloodshot" is also fantastic, which is kind of like classic Flash Full of Color, Enter Shikari, like Gandhi Make Gandhi sort of style. For the most part, it's great. Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite Shikari record by any stretch of the imagination. I think they've definitely put out more cohesive records. It's definitely the one I would consider the most messy, and when it hits, it's fantastic. And for me, when it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's just my opinion. So, but no, absolutely love a lot of the songs from that record for sure.
My biggest criticism of it at the time when it came out really was like how short it feels. You know, for comparison, like this song's got 12 tracks on it. It doesn't actually have 12 tracks because some of them are just continuations. But you know, the last record they released was Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. Had I think it had 15 tracks and is about 15 minutes longer. And you know, like it just finishes and you kind of like, do I put it on again? Because I feel like I've not had the full record.
I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about EPs and short form content. I think a lot of records are getting shorter. Like I've listened to about 250 albums this year, and I have noticed that when I was a teenager, albums would be about 45, 46, 50 minutes long. That was kind of the standard. Nowadays, to get an album beyond 35 minutes is kind of a novelty. And if there's an album above an hour, like sometimes even I think twice about listening to an album above an hour. It just feels like a chunk of time. Like these days, with all our distraction around us, it kind of feels like we don't have the time to be listening to a full length album. So albums are getting shorter. You might absolutely be right that we're heading in the way of like EPs will become the album eventually, and people may well just end up releasing two 4-track EPs every year rather than releasing one big album. Maybe that's the way we're going, but absolutely the new Shikari record is a little shorter than the last, and with all the skits and the codas and the interludes and the things like that, it only serves to make that album feel shorter than it even is.
Shorter, yeah.
But there you go, fantastic.
Do you want to take us away with your number 4?
My number 4 is they're an up and coming band from Manchester. I first became aware of last year. They are called Maruja, and they are a post-punk band from Manchester. They've just put out an EP this past year called Knocknaria. And it's absolutely incredible. Now, the thing I always say about Maruja, and have always said, because I've been on their hype train since their second song came out, so quite early into their career, and they have yet to put out something that doesn't impress me. So the formula for Maruja is this really abrasive post-punk, a lot of spoken word passages, a lot of quite heavy riffs, lots of crescendo, and also a fantastic and always excellently placed saxophone player who's always there to actually add some really menacing tones to all of their sounds. Now, that kind of sounds really not fun. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't blame you if it wasn't for you. It is very, very, what shall I say? I don't want to say abrasive, but it's not like easy listening. What I will say, it's not like Death Grips. It's not harsh noise.
It's
either.
concentrated listening.
Yeah, I would say in order to properly appreciate the musicality of Maruja, you really need to be paying attention. Sometimes it will take multiple listens to really get into the intricacies of like some of the playing is absolutely incredible. Sometimes you'll notice small things in there that you've never noticed before, and always that they will build to something that is much greater than itself. So it's not one of those that you stick on in the background because that way you're not appreciating it. But the new Maruja record is absolutely incredible. Highlights, Thunder, absolutely incredible track. I would describe it as very grey. I don't know if anyone knows what I mean by that, but if there was a color palette for the band Maruja and the EP Nocnaria, it's just incredibly grey and overcast, and that's what makes it so amazing to me, anyway. But there you go. I've got nothing further to say. Go and listen to that project, Nocnaria. It's amazing. It's about 20 minutes and change. No excuses. Go and listen.
Yeah, just I think it's a 4-track EP, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to it earlier, and like I said before we actually started, because get all the conversations about the songs that you're going to be talking about out of the way before you start doing the show.
Of course.
Yeah, I got halfway through it and got interrupted, and then when I was trying to come back to it later to finish listening to the stuff, because I figured I should actually pay attention to what it is that you're going to be talking about this time around. Third time's the charm. I'll get things right next year. But yeah, like coming back to it, like I appreciate what you said, obviously, regarding it's building up to something, and if you kind of like stop halfway through, you've kind of cut off the momentum of it building, which means that like you can't really appreciate like the added elements that are almost self-referential. And I did actually think that I was still listening to track 1 at one point when it was like track 3. I was like, this is a long song. And then you look back at the track listing and you're like, oh no, this isn't a long song, actually. I'm just an idiot.
No, they cultivate such an atmosphere all their own that songs sort of they expertly bleed into each other. So even though they don't sound like the same song, they do sound like a natural progression from one song to the next. So it could absolutely be all one song, but then who would listen? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do love like the perfect crafting of like an album track list that feeds between song and song. Like, obviously, when you listen to a playlist of songs just like gathered together, might not work as well. It might actively harm some of them. Like if you ever like stick one of like the early Panic at the Disco record like songs into a playlist, it's got about 2 minutes of intro, or the previous songs like final riff going off it.
Yeah, I tell you what pisses me off every single time. The song "Lying is the most fun a girl can have with her clothes off" always ends with just the tiniest 10-second intro to "I Write Sins Not Tragedies," and that just every single time it pisses me off that I'm not queued up. Right, Sins Not Tragedies.
Instead, on comes "Blue" by Eiffel 62. I don't know.
Eiffel 65, you novice.
I was gonna say 69, but I was like, it can't be 69.
Eiffel 69.
That's my cover band project.
Oh, and you're just covering that one song.
Just that one song. Well, to be honest, I think there's only one way out of this self-referential bit of nonsense, and that's for me to talk about my entry at number 4, which is Air, with their self-titled EP, Air, which isn't called One Way Out.
No.
And
also to clarify, that's Air with an H.
Yeah, HEIR. A Northern England like independent band. I think they do pretty much everything themselves. This band came across my path years ago. I was still at uni. Put them on at a gig actually once, but then just kept listening to them, and they were constantly releasing absolute bops, like very sort of like retro inspired synthy pop stuff, like and if you do get the chance to see them live, which I do recommend, it's rather what's the band I'm thinking of, Duran style,
New Romantic.
New Romantic, very shaped and all of that, and it is really cool. But One Way Out, I'm gonna list off my like highlights from it. So One Way Out being the song that I meant to say rather than Air. And If You Sell the Piano as well, I think that as a song is absolutely like beautiful in terms of like the idea of what it is that kind of builds a relationship, like, and when it goes as well, like who gets to keep the piano that you've put into your house together because you saw the perfect place for it before you'd even got the piano, and it's got some just absolute brilliant vocal hooks. I hear they're planning on renaming harmonies to harmonies.
Gross.
This is my podcast. I can do what I want.
All right. No, I listened to the Air EP pretty much in full. What I will is it an EP? No, it's
It
an
is
album.
an EP.
Yes, it is an EP. I was right the first time. Don't doubt
21
yourself.
minutes, 6 songs. There's absolutely no fucking way that's a record.
You never know. To be fair, you never know these days.
In 2023, there's no way that's a record
in the
yet.
year of our Lord 2023. But no, yeah, I quite liked it. It's very what's the word? How do kids call it these days? Yacht. It's yacht rock, dad rock. It's very chilled out. It's very dad rock. It reminded me a little bit of Elton John, that first track.
Yeah.
With the pianos and stuff. It's a very old soul way of writing songs that I don't think a lot of people do anymore, which is a great shame because it's a really honest. It's a really. Would it make sense if I said it was a really honest vibe? Does that make sense?
I pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah, it feels heartfelt. And in a way that inorganic instrumentation doesn't a lot of the time anymore.
Yeah,
I think just the addition of a piano as a main instrument can sometimes just make me happy. So, yeah, great tracks. The one that I particularly enjoyed from that record was it was called "Picturing Mother." I thought that song was really nice.
I really liked Picturing Mother. It did have to grow on me a little bit. It was a little bit, the first time I heard it, it was a little bit, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it just wasn't quite there. And then like repeated listening and watching the music video as well, because sometimes, the whole sort of medium that you engage with the music like can complement it. So I do quite like the visual. It's always going to happen. I'm a videographer, like, the visual storytelling that you can do with audio, but in video form, I think is brilliant. And, can just add a whole new narrative. Like the thing that Picturing Mother's about, not really knowing if you're ready to be a parent and things like that. But more from the perspective of, oh, my sibling doesn't know that they're ready to be a parent, but I can see that they are perfect for it. I just really like the deeper meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Not that it's
I think
subtle.
that's nice. Oh no, but it's a very genuine, is what I would say. It's genuine songwriting. You can tell they've written it. They've not written it for an audience. They've written it for them. It's very specific to their life. They're speaking on their experiences, which just sort of adds to the really organic instrumentation as well. So absolutely a fantastic pick. I like it. I will be listening out for the band Air in the coming years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you get a chance to see Air live, do it. It will be fun. But yeah, let's move on to number 3. And, I think it's quite funny that we've both got the same thing at number 3. And I'm allowing you to say why.
You're allowing me to say why?
Yeah, I'm allowing you to say that this is why they're both at number 3.
Damn it, I wish I'd picked up what you put down. Well, this is why I've got Paramore. This is why at number 3.
Tell me Paramore about this.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, Paramore, the great, the fantastic, the ever-present, the wonderful. Yes, Paramore have been a band since 2006, 2005, and have been through a lot of phases in their career. It's fairly easy to say. I first picked up Paramore 2007, 2008, around the time that they were getting absolutely astronomically huge in the sort of Kerrang sort of circles with their albums Riot and Brand New Eyes. Back when they were still making these really pop-punk tinged emo ballads, these really fantastic, hard-hitting tracks. At the time, I was with them when they transitioned to a much more straight arena rock sort of sound on their self-titled. I was with them when they shifted gears once more on This Is Laughter. It's After Laughter. On After Laughter, when they started making these really sad pop tracks with really glossy production and really dour sad like lyrics. I was with them then. I've been a Paramore fan for pretty much my entire life, and it didn't stop when they released "This Is Why" at the start of the year. "This Is Why" is, I would say,
Hot perfection.
perfection, maybe I will say. So I genuinely think the influences they take at this point in their career have never culminated in a project that's quite as diverse as This Is Why. So it's like they've taken everything from After Laughter, and they've also taken everything from their self-titled record. They've sucked out all the great things from those records, and they've shoved them both together. There's thundering riffs on that project, amazing vocal hooks, a la Hayley Williams, always. All of the lyricism is absolutely perfect for what they're trying to deliver. It's an album that, with lyrics that could only come out in the 21st century, in the year of our Lord 2023, where she's talking about being easily distracted, and that's why she's constantly running out of time on the song. You guessed it, running out of time, where she's talking about the news being constantly a drain on people's existence, a drain on life, being constantly being worn out by life, with all the distraction and all of the nonsense that's going on right now. It feels like a very current record. It feels like a very 2023 record, is what I will say. They take influence from sort of dance punk records as well. There's a lot of Block Party influence, I think, on some of the singles, which I think is absolutely incredible on some of the guitar work. The drumming is absolutely stellar, because of course they brought back is his name Zach? The drumming is absolutely stellar, as it has always been. When Zach was doing his thing in the background, it's funky, it's groovy, it's got riffs, it's absolutely incredible. It's a perfect Paramore album, and they have yet to miss for me. And yeah, I love Paramore, and this is Paramore. Great.
Yeah. It is Zach Farrow. Josh Farrow was the guitarist. But yeah, everything that you've just said completely echo, because Paramore, This Is Why, is also my number 3, as I said beforehand, in a very clunky segue. The other thing that I will add in is, you've obviously pointed out the combination of their self-titled and After Laughter. I think as well there is quite a bit that they've taken from Hayley Williams' solo after Petals for a More. And I think as well, like, a lot of the ideas that we've got going on in This Is Why wouldn't necessarily work as well, or at least wouldn't be as refined, if it hadn't have been for Hayley Williams' solo project of, Petals for Armor. It's absolutely shocking that she didn't headline any festivals, like, as a result of that record. But still, This Is Why coming in, it's just an absolute banger. I don't know how to describe it any better.
No, you're absolutely right. I think Hayley Williams took what she was doing with her solo work, where she was taking much more of an indie route.
Yeah.
In some places, it even sounded like a Radiohead record, just with Hayley Williams on. And she's taken that, and and Paramore have just flipped it. They've polished it. They've added much more guitar. They've added much more funky elements to it, but I absolutely do agree. The DNA of Petals for Armor is absolutely all over This Is Why. And no, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. I want more Paramore to sound like this going forwards as well, particularly. Like, obviously with development, because you don't want it to stagnate. Paramore, This Is Why, like, you've obviously, you mentioned, some of those songs, like C'est Comme Ça. It's just, you're French. What does it mean?
It means that's the way it is. C'est comme ça. That's how it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, the whole point of that chorus is just, that's it, basically.
That's just, this is how it is. Yeah. Ironically, basically, this is why.
This is why. Exactly. But yeah, Big Man Little Dignity, like,
oh, great song.
Brings me to tears half the time I'm listening to it.
Figure Eight.
Yeah, I was just about to say Figure Eight. Like, I was listening to that on the train home yesterday from work. Just the sort of feeling of like being stuck in that loop and just never like being able to escape it is.
I think
She's captured
So
something.
I've been putting together my my list of top 60 tracks of the year for my own podcast. So go and check that out when that comes out. And I really had trouble picking a Paramore song for the year. I only allow one track per artist, and I really honestly do think that there is not a bad song on that project. For the most part, near enough every song is absolutely incredible. So great record front to back, I will say.
Absolutely. And please, Paramore, give us more of this.
Yes, 100%. I crave more of this Paramore project. There's a song called Crave on the record as well. Moving on.
Liar.
Oh yes, yeah, there was also a song called Liar. Great. Wonderful. Anything else to add before we move on?
Just the only other no, there are two more songs that we haven't mentioned. Since we've named every other song on the thing. So I'm just gonna say Thick Skull, and before we get to number 2, I'm gonna give it to you first.
Oh.
That was
the
second.
Yes, got it. Yeah, you first. I was like, what's the second song? I don't. Yeah.
This podcast is 90% puns, 5% segs, 5% music journalism, and you're bringing the 5% music journalism to this episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Does that mean you're bringing the 5% sex? Oh wait, no, you said segs.
I said segs.
Number 2. My number 2 favorite record of the year is quite a weird one, I will say. I've not heard a lot of people talking about this year outside of the certain post-punk circles that I do find myself in on Instagram. But it is the band HMLTD, previously known as Happy Meal Limited. They have a new record out titled The Worm. Now, The Worm is a very all-encompassing what's the word I'm looking for? It's
the concept album.
It's a concept album. Thank you so much. I could not remember the name it's a concept album. Essentially, the concept for this record is that in a horrible post-apocalyptic society, a giant worm has awoken from beneath the earth and is absolutely ravaging society, eating entire villages in its wake, and society has collapsed and reverted back to a feudalist society with sort of lords and knights and things like that, and half society is sort of this cultish society that praises the worm as a god, and the other half are obviously sort of this sort of roguish society of outlaws that want to destroy the worm. And the worm is also a huge metaphor for capitalism throughout the entire project. Spoilers, I guess. But yeah, no, it's an absolutely bonkers concept, absolutely insane, and in the wrong hands, it absolutely would be the corniest thing to ever come out of anything ever. In fact, you could probably see this as like a Rick and Morty episode, like a really shit Rick and Morty episode. I'm sure most people could. It actually, for the most part, works so incredibly well. Likely due to the fact that HMLTD use this really fantastic palette of sounds and soundscapes to really get this across. So the bits in which are slightly more menacing, so it needs to convey a more menacing tone. They use these really complex post-punky sort of sounds. There are moments that borrow from like the Nina Simone songbook, literally the Sinner song or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what it's.
Cinnamon song.
The Cinnamon song. So it literally lifts the piano from Cinnamon by Nina Simone, and it uses it to such incredible effect. Constantly the songs are warping and changing and getting more and more menacing. You have no idea where the song is going, and it will start one way and finish in a completely different place. Even my partner, who is not a huge fan of music that sounds like this, has been an absolutely massive fan of this project this year as well. Because of the range of different sounds that they use. No two songs are, you never know what you're going to get between songs. Some songs are softer. When they need to sing, they sing. It's fantastic. When they need to shout, they shout. It's equally fantastic. They never stick to one vibe. It's always changing. It's always fantastic. And it tells the story in a really heartfelt, genuine way, which is so insane for such an out there concept. Yeah, it's just it's wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. It's vibrant. The storytelling is amazing. They brought out a separate book that came with the vinyl release, which goes into way more detail about this absolutely weird made up society. I haven't got the book, but I do have a PDF copy. And reading the book and then listening to the record, they add to each other. It's absolutely insane. Anyway, yeah, fantastic. It's if I'd have asked myself what my favorite record was in summer, this definitely would have topped it. It would have absolutely hit number one, no questions asked. I've had some time now to reflect on it, and obviously the album that's at my number one as well. But that's not to take away from it, because it's an absolute feat of songwriting. It's an absolute feat of storytelling. I can't wait to hear what HMLTD come out with next. The Worm is here. This is Wormlands.
I will completely agree with that, having listened to it in preparation for this. Like, it's been added to my library. Like, I really enjoyed listening to this record. Didn't pick up on the concept album element of it until, like, I think I was 4 songs in, when I was like, hang on a second, and just kind of like realized, oh, something's come back. They're still talking about the worm, but this and it's like, what's going on? But it reminded me a little bit of a band called Thank You Scientist. Like, there's like a few elements of a bit like math rocky stuff going on at times, and I really
100%.
do like the variety, and like completely appreciate, like you mentioned your partner was vibing to it because it was so out there. That I don't think I've heard anything that sounds exactly like this record before. Obviously, like, you pick up things and you find familiarity within it, but ultimately the Worm is a unique experience that I fully recommend people do.
It takes a lot of things, and it creates this really fantastic collage with them that I really, really love. A lot of familiar sounds, like I said. It's not a lot of it's not reinventing the wheel, but it is distorting the wheel in such a way that I have never seen. And I really do think there are very few bands who could have pulled this record off, because it is so winding and so strange in so many places. But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
My number 2 is Calva Louise. I think they called it a mixtape, actually. Where do mixtapes fall in the land of EP, LP, and all of that shit?
A very complicated question, Ruby. So essentially, a mixtape is just it's not meant to be taken as a cohesive piece of work. It's not meant to be something that stands on its own. So, for example, a mixtape during the 90s would take a lot of different sounds and put a lot of different spin, throw a lot at a wall and see what sticks. So essentially, a mixtape is a very old school way of saying a playlist.
Well, I mean, in that kind of scenario, that works really well for Calva Louise, because Over the Threshold is a bit of a genre mash of so many different elements. Like, you've got the like sort of punky metal screams, you've got jazz guitar solos and piano elements of it, which, spoiler alert for a Calva Louise live show, they have a sliding keyboard that they get out so that Jess, the singer and guitarist and keyboardist, can play without even fucking moving or putting a guitar down. It's crazy. Third Class Citizen is a punk tune about, just being treated like shit and how no one should be a third class citizen. Ultimately, you can feel the anger coming through, and I feel like this sort of overall vibe for Calva Louise is a bit of a shift from what they've been doing previously. Like there's been these elements there, but they've never taken the forefront. And to start off with Third Class Citizen as the first track of this modern mixtape, I meant to say modern playlist because I was going to be doing the bit, but yeah, the first track of this mixtape, you know, it sets the intentions quite clear, and then the follow-up track, Feast is Over, you know, it's kind of like not exactly an antithesis of it, but like it's a bit more almost not mellow, but less aggressive, but still carrying across a lot of the same like meanings and like elements of dissatisfaction. I find Concorazon, I don't know how you'd say it. It's in Spanish. Jess is gonna kill me if she's listening to this. I don't tend to listen to a lot of music that isn't in English. You know, it's never really been something that's come across, but started listening to a lot wider varieties of music. I've got songs in my Apple Music library that are entirely in Japanese. I don't know what's being said. I can pick up on a vibe, but I don't know what's being said.
Sometimes it's about the vibe, and understanding what they say takes a back seat. It doesn't matter. If it sounds good, it sounds good.
Well, that was basically the point that I was building up to, Chazz. Thank you very much. You know, I know that Concorazon means with heart because I watched the music video with subtitles. But at the same time, I enjoyed that song before I knew what was being said. It's just sort of a testament to how good a piece of music you can create with like language isn't a barrier in music. Language is just an added instrument. And as long as you've got the right components, you've got the right ingredients, you can still produce something that even someone who doesn't, I speak Spanish, but someone who doesn't speak Spanish can, I don't speak great Spanish, but I speak some Spanish.
I speak Spanish, she says.
No me gusta. But, you know, like you can appreciate it regardless. And, you know, think that if this is just a mixtape and is building onto something bigger, potentially something more expansive of this sound, I am all for it. And I think like the direction that Calva Louise are heading in is a direction that's going to put them, you know, very much at the forefront, maybe 2024, 2025. A lot more people are going to be talking about this band.
Fantastic, very well put. I listened to quite a lot of that record before we did this podcast. I will say I didn't listen to all of it. Some notable things. I have notable thoughts. So they fall into a trend, I think, in alternative music that I think is absolutely a breath of fresh air. Where a lot of alternative bands these days don't really feel the need to box themselves in with a genre. The one that comes straight to my mind is like the massive success of like bands like Sleep Token this year as well. They feel free to add in these really heavy elements, but then they can borrow from genres like R&B and pop, and they'll also take a lot of punky elements and stuff like that, and they'll fuse them all together in these really creative ways. And I think that's one thing that the music of that, I think that's one of the cultural touching stones that I think we'll be talking about 20 years from now. What defined Gen Z's sort of music and how they consumed music is the genre, and the importance of genre is so unnecessary these days. You so very rarely do I meet young people who are one thing. Like a lot of the time I'll hear people who love metal just as much as they love the Spice Girls. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's one of the cultural touchstones, one of the things that's making alternative music now so special. It's bands like Calva Louise who are willing to fuse these very different sounds together, that are at the forefront of that sound, at the forefront of that change, and they're very, very important. A lot of times on this record, I really could draw a comparison between them and I think the band Wargasm, who we have played on the on this.
We've played them. I've got a copyright strike in that scenario.
You did what?
You said that we've played them on this show.
Yeah, we haven't. We have not played them.
You're thinking of your own show.
Yeah. My show, we do play the music, but that's I get around that because I'm cool. You know what I mean? I get around that because people love me. And
you also use a tool that allows that distribution.
Yeah, and also because I'm deep in the pocket of Spotify. Yeah. What was I saying? I literally
I do see a very similar like vibe to, particularly for me, earlier Wargasm, like where it is very riff central and very like hard hitting and heavier.
Yeah. they would take these sort of industrial style sort of production, very, very clean sort of, a lot of it was influenced by EDM and also like electronic music and industrial music, but they would also have these really, really punky riffs and these really hard hitting, shrieking vocals. And a lot of this project, or at least the big hitters from this project, kind of reminded me of that Wargasm sound that we were big fans of in like 2020 and 2021. I think for me, and as well for you, it's sort of dropped off in recent years, to say the least. But
it does disappoint me a little bit that, like, you know, I think 2 years ago I would have gone to I would have gone to see. I think Wargasm are playing in Manchester tonight at the date of recording. I wouldn't be sat here recording this podcast right now, I think maybe 2 years ago. But for me personally, like, the Wargasm spark on my end, like, there are people out there who are appreciating what they're doing, but it's just not for me anymore, unfortunately.
I think they just take themselves a little too seriously for a band that sounds like they're having so much fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, when they first started out, there was an element of fun, there was an element of lightheartedness to what they were doing, which I think they've sort of lost.
Milky, did you see that riff? Yeah, it's sick. New metal is definitely coming back. Would not be a lyric on like the newest Wargasm record that came out this year, and notably isn't even in our honorable mentions.
Spoiler alert for my show, if you want to go listen to my show. In January, I'll be doing my top 20 albums of the year. I've already given the game away with 4 of these because they don't include EPs, because I'll be doing a top 10 EPs as well. But Wargasm record is not in there. All the Wargasm songs that have come out this year, I think I liked one with Fred Durst, and that's not in the top 60 song. Yeah, Bang Your Head. Oh, that song was fun. I thought it was fun, but I kind of I have a soft spot for Fred Durst being dumb. So so yeah, but whatever. Either way, we're not talking about Wargasm. We're talking about Calva Louise. Calva Louise making a great racket. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will give one last song shout out as well to Opportunista, which is track 3 on Over the Threshold. Let's move on to our last entries of our... I mean, I've been calling it top 5. Like, really, it's kind of like favorite, at least for me.
Yours could go in any order.
I think kind of, yeah, like to an element of that. But, these are all, things that I've really enjoyed this year. And like, I've tried to base like the order sort of more around, what's resonated, what's stuck around more, and what like have I enjoyed the most.
So my top 5, they're all for me 9 out of 10 and above, for sure. Definitely 10 out of 10. These last 2, they could have been interchangeable depending on when you've asked me this year. So, but are we ready for number 1?
I don't know. Are we ready for number 1?
Oh, well, I'm ready to tell you about my number 1.
I'm ready to listen about it.
Great.
Are you at home ready to listen? Let us know in that there isn't a live chat, because this is a podcast on demand.
Yeah. It's a pre-recorded podcast, Ruby. She's losing her mind.
This is just what happens when we...
At the end of this episode, we're going to put her in a home. She's going to go back to where she belongs.
No, you've just revealed the reason as to why there haven't been any Fresh from the Scene episodes this year.
She's going to go back to eating soft foods and buckle back down to her bed. We let her out for a bit, but after this, it's back to Bobo time, okay? I don't fucking know. Sometimes
give me your number 1.
Sometimes you just got to say stuff and see what sticks. Cool. My number 1 this year, like I say, the last record that I talked about, The Worm, HMLTD, ask me at any point in the year, this number 1 would have switched backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. But if I'm completely honest with myself, my number 1 this year has to be the record that not only resonated with me, but also is very, very present always in regular rotation listening. And that would have to be the new Japanese House record. In the end, it always does. So Japanese House is a real name. It's one person. Her name is Amber Bain, indie pop singer-songwriter, who I actually had not been very much, I'd been aware of, but I hadn't been like a frequent listener of. I think I had maybe one song that I quite liked that maybe sat in a playlist somewhere. But this year, she really took my music listening by storm by releasing what is just the most cohesive and most wonderfully beautiful set of tracks that I've heard all year. They are just some of the most fantastic and well-written tracks that I've heard. The production is fantastic. The songwriting is beautiful. And really, that's enough to take it over the top. There isn't a bad moment on this thing. From front to back, it is 10 out of 10. Some of the most gorgeous songwriting I've heard. Whether that's the sun-kissed Sunshine Baby, which was the first track that I heard from this record. Whether it's Touching Yourself with its quite funny tongue-in-cheek musings on modern relationships, just lots of absolutely fantastic songwriting. It's absolutely wonderful from start to finish. I can't say enough nice things about it. I don't know. It doesn't have this great massive story around it like HMLTD does, like The Worm does. It doesn't have something I can talk about for 4 minutes. It's just wonderful songwriting. Although, funnily enough, this album it was written at a time when Amber Bain had moved to a different area of the UK and had started a polycule. She was in a polyamorous relationship, so some of that experience is featured on this record, as well as the breakdown of that relationship and the subsequent loneliness, where she found herself in a very unfamiliar territory, having moved there to be with in this romantic relationship with these different partners, having moved to be there to be with them. She then found herself feeling quite alone and isolated in that very unfamiliar environment. So a lot of that translates into the music that way as well. But really, that just plays second fiddle to what is just essentially some absolutely gorgeous, stellar indie pop songwriting that I cannot say enough good things about. I implore anyone who hasn't heard the new Japanese House record to at least give it a shot, no matter what you're into, because it's just, when songwriting's good, when music is just good. Yeah, it's one of those. Lovely stuff. That's really all I have to say about that one.
Yeah, following on from what you just said, I will also add that when listening to this record, I fucking loved it. And I knew I was going to enjoy it from that first piano lick, just because without even having heard it before, it felt so familiar, and I just kind of knew that there was going to be a good vibe. I knew that I was in love with this record, though, by Sad to Breathe. That was the moment I went, okay, cool, I'm adding this to my library. I'm going to favorite this song because fuck me, that was good. But yeah, it's not really a genre of music that I have on a lot, but one of the things I did enjoy about this a lot was just how it really does allow you to experience what Amber's gone through whilst creating this record.
So it's absolutely funny that you say your favorite track was Sad to Breathe. I think Sad to Breathe is one of the most beautiful tracks on that record. One of my favorite tracks of the year, full stop. Bit of a spoiler for my top 16 that's coming out later this year, but there you go. Boyhood is also absolutely fantastic. Some absolutely fantastically stellar acoustic guitar work on that record as well. Kind of reminded me of A Big Thief. If any of the listeners are a big fan of that, it's sort of a pop version of that band. And yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those where the highlights from the record are really absolutely some of the most well-written songs that I have ever heard in my whole life, and it's one that I will probably carry with me for a very long time. It's also one that my partner got absolutely sick of listening to this year, because come rain or shine, good mood, bad mood, it was always an album that fit every mood for me. If I was in a happy mood, I always found a lot of the lyrics and a lot of those soundscapes that she builds around her guitar to be really uplifting. And if I was sad, it felt like an ideal project to listen to as well, because it wouldn't have any answers for me, but at the same time, it didn't let me wallow in sadness. So if there are moments to it that feel crushingly sad, but there are moments to it that feel really gorgeously, upliftingly, beautifully happy as well. And I just think it's a canvas painted of human experience, and that's what I love about it. In the end, it always does. By the Japanese House is my album of the year, because it feels incredibly human, incredibly lived in, like a really warm, comfy jumper, like a cardigan. And we all know how much I love a bloody cardigan. So,
Chazz, you do love your cardigans.
they didn't call me Cardigan Queen at university for nothing. Great record. Can't say enough good things about it. Ruby, you've got a number one.
I do, and like I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think this might end up being my, top record of the year when it originally came out. This band is my favorite band of all time, and I will say that to get that out of the way. Like, there's going to be an element of bias to this, but this is why I've called it the top 5 albums I enjoyed, and there is no album that I enjoyed more than McFly's 7th studio record, Power to Play. Now, the last time we were doing this, McFly didn't even enter my top 5, and they did release a record that year. Either that or it made it onto the list because I needed to include something. I can't remember which way around it was. Young Dumb Thrills, that's what it was. McFly's Young Dumb Thrills, ultimately, retrospectively, 2 years later, wasn't good. It sounded messy. It was incoherent. It kind of felt like McFly didn't know what they wanted to be doing anymore, which, granted, there was 11 years between that record and their previous one. But, their previous one had more merits to it, and that was Above the Noise. I think, we both have said plenty of negative things about Above the Noise. McFly have said plenty of negative things about Above the Noise.
It's got a couple of good tracks on it, but it's definitely not what I wanted or what anyone wanted. I don't even think it's what McFly wanted from McFly, so...
From listening to interviews with band members, it doesn't sound like it. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is Power to Play, which is a very sort of 70s, 80s rock inspired record. Like, McFly have refound their guitars. The album does start off with the very cheesy "Where Did All the Guitars Go?" And this album is absolutely not lacking in cheese. If you are vegan, I would, stay clear, or find a substitute. Busted aren't good enough to be a substitute for McFly, though.
Shade! The shade! I mean, you're so right, but shade!
Yeah, but, like I say, they found that thing, and they are very much wearing their influences on the sleeve for this record. Land of the Bees, a very sort of proggy rock song, the most proggiest McFly have ever been. It's changing time signature so much as well and things like that. But Rush, Queen, Springsteen, Bryan Adams, you can feel all of those influences in that song. I'm Fine, a bit Smashing Pumpkinsy. There's a lot more Dougie-led songs on this record, which I do really like. I think more Dougie influence has got to be a good thing. And they did work a lot with Lost Alone Stephen Battelle on this record, as well as, the classics, Jason Perry from A. McFly have gone back to almost Radioactive style McFly, where it's 2 guitars, bass, drums, maybe a bit of keys and vocals, and the band working together to produce what they do best, which is Tom and Danny putting together, their voices, which work unbelievably well together. The pairing that they've got as lead vocalists, for me, it culminates in Honey, I'm Home, where Danny gets some absolutely phenomenal vocals that every time I'm listening to it hit me to the core. And both times that I've seen that song played live this year have actually put me in tears. And not just because I'm watching McFly live in 2023.
Fair enough. I mean, to be fair, it's funny you mentioned that track, Honey, I'm Home. We didn't talk about this record before we... that is one of what I will say, probably the few tracks from this record that have stuck with me since I listened to it when it came out. That being said, I will say I'm a recovering McFly addict. And when I say a McFly addict, that was when I was 14? I still remember Wonderland coming out, and I thought that album was one of the best records I'd ever heard in my life. But you do think that when it's a seminal record and you're 11 years old when it comes out. No, I will say I do definitely prefer this most recent McFly record to the last McFly record. I don't know. You were absolutely right when it says it definitely puts its cheese on its sleeves, as it will say. It knows what it is, absolutely 100%. The tracks that hit home do hit home. So Honey, I'm Home, I think is, for me, where I think I want McFly to be right now. I've talked a lot about honest songwriting. And for me, Danny's delivery on that song is very honest, and the song itself feels like, the family men that they are for the most part. The middle-aged guys raising kids with their wives, songs that they want to be writing, and that for me feels more honest. It feels more genuine. I feel like the title track, not the title track, Where Did All the Guitars Go?
Yeah, the opening track to sort of set the vibe of, we're bringing guitars back to this thing, but it is cheesy as fuck.
It's so outdated, bro. In the mainstream, there's so many guitars these days. Pop punk is huge right now. Maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, but those guitars are compressed to fuck, and you can't hear them.
Oh, 100%. It's not. If it's not about the amount of guitars, it's how you use them. They're using them badly. But no, the guitar is still there. It always will be there.
It's just not the focus.
And there will always be room for guitars in music, whether or not it's compressed as shit or not. I kind of get the point they're making on the album, but it is chock full of cheese, and that's all right. If that's what you that's what you like, that's what you like. If that's what you want to make, that's what you want to make. And cheese. There is a reason that Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline is still the karaoke classic. Do you know what I mean? We all need a bit of cheese. As a Frenchman, cheese is important.
As a vegan, cheese is less important.
This is the only cheese Ruby will allow herself.
Exactly. A bit of McFly, but a bit of 2023 guitar-led McFly, harking back, like I mentioned, to Radioactive, which for me, generally has been, my favorite McFly record for quite a while. It usually swaps between Radioactive and Wonderland, depending on what kind of mood I'm in. But Power to Play for me has sort of cemented itself in that top 3.
Ironically, you were talking about McFly and them writing some progressive stuff on this record. I do think Wonderland does sit in a sort of progressive pop era where
I can agree with that.
Where Danny and Tom let their songwriting go absolutely insane on that record. There are sweets from there that could be straight ripped out of a Sondheim musical. What I would say is progressive pop.
Well, yeah, that is our list. Obviously, it's worth going through them again because we did obviously go through them over quite a while. So I'm happy to
chatting a lot of shit in between.
And chatting a lot of shit in between, absolutely. So for me, the top 5: Enter Shikari, A Kiss for the Whole World, Air, self-titled EP, Paramore, This Is Why, Calva, Louise, Over the Threshold, and finishing with McFly, Power to Play.
And for me, it was number 5, the Peppa Pig album. Number 4, SpongeBob, the Camp Classics.
Chazz, you're looking at the wrong list.
Oh, damn it. My 5 favourite records of the year are Sampha with Lahai, Maruja with Knocknaria, fantastic EP, Paramore, This Is Why, HMLTD, The Worm, and then The Japanese House. In the end, it always does. There you go.
Yeah, now go and check those out and then let us know what you think. And if you don't enjoy them, who cares? We've enjoyed them a lot ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Do let me know that my list is better than Ruby's. You can find me on Instagram at Chazz_Cheron. Also, you can go and follow my podcast as well, Feedback a Weekly, where I discuss my absolutely phenomenal music taste in further detail. And follow us on Instagram as well, feedbacker.pod. There you go.
Without an E between the K and the R.
Yes.
Right.
So Feedbacker is spelled so it's spelled feed, FEED, BCKR. So Backer
without the vowels.
Backer has no vowels in it.
Well, go and check those out. And thank you very much for your patience with me, Chazz, for taking 2 years to organize this podcast. Thank you for joining me as well.
No worries. Always happy to be here. Always happy to be here.
And on that note, everybody listening, have a good Christmas and New Year, or other festive holidays that you may or may not celebrate.
You could have just left it at Happy Holidays, but you had to go with Happy Christmas and New Year and other holidays.
You're listening to Fresh from the Scene with Ruby Price.